Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
I'm Ethan, sitting alongside Pete, and we've got an action-packed big breakdown today. Hey, Pete, what's up?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
Everything is great. It is a new week, a new episode, and as we are at the end of the month of May, it is time to turn our calendars to June. And do you know what that means?
Officially, or at least meteorologically, it's the start of summer.
Yeah.
But in terms of Hollywood, we're a month into the summer blockbuster season. For some reason, Hollywood's decided to co-opt the month of May as a part of the summer blockbusters, which I'm okay with, to be honest. That's just one extra month of potential good movies.
I still think back to like childhood or grade school, and summer begins when school ends, and that's June. So for me, exactly. The summer blockbuster season is June, July, August. May, I hear you. It's kind of a spring, summer transition month.
And the reason we're obviously talking about this, if you haven't figured it out, which you should have because it's the title of this week's episode, we're doing our annual summer predicties, where Ethan gives his list of what he thinks is going to be in the top 10 summer blockbusters. I do the same. We compare notes. We compare positioning. We make justifications for why we think we've placed our movies together. And of course, because it's so rare, we've also given each other 2 wild cards each. And the whole point is at the end of August, so we wait for that final tally, and then we compare notes and we compare scores and see what the box office results are on a global scale. And then we get crowned who's the winner. If
we had the time and the technical inclination, we would do a montage of what we did last year for our summer predictees. We had some real wins and some real fails last year, huh?
Yeah, I think that.
Or maybe not our fails. It was some cinema fails.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that the predictions we made at the beginning of May, I think were quite reasonable. I don't think we threw in any predictions that were so far off the beaten path.
No.
I think that last summer especially was just a shock to Hollywood's system. I think it forced a lot of Hollywood studios to kind of sit up and pay attention and just think, hey, you know what? We can't be agenda driven anymore. And look, again, the problem with this topic is that inevitably it becomes a political topic. Even though this has nothing to do with politics, at the end of the day, if the movie is good, it shouldn't matter if you lean to the left or if you lean to the right. A good movie is a good movie. It's a fun movie. But inevitably, the far left or the far right or whatever part of the political spectrum you're from, they inevitably co-opt different aspects of the movies and say, oh, well, this studio is too woke. That's why it's not working out. Or this studio is too conservative, and that's why that didn't work out. But I think that's a bunch of nonsense.
I think that's nonsense. But I think if we take a step back from last summer, what we found from last summer was that Hollywood did need to sit up and take notice, but it was because they were putting out not just sequels, but repeated sequels, right? We had Fast and Furious X. We had a new
Indiana Jones.
I mean, I think our problem last summer was that even Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that the big fail last summer was that audiences did not flock to the big names just because it was a big name. And the things that, number 1 and number 2 was, right, Barbenheimer, the Barbie movie, which was an old intellectual property, but a new movie, and Oppenheimer, right, which was, a historical story, but still, the first time it appeared on screen. So I think that was the big lesson. Hopefully, if there was a lesson, the lesson was people want to see something new and not just the 4th installment of an aged Harrison Ford, running around like he's a young man again.
So I'm looking at the top 10 list that we actually saw from last summer.
Yeah.
And we had 6 true sequels, 1 remake, and only 3 original movies.
Well, that's going to be really interesting when we look at our top 10 now, because it's not dramatically different.
Not dramatically different. And I think and you and I have railed about this for, I think, since we actually started this podcast. I think more importantly, even more important than the sequelitis that everyone sees, it's all about fiscal management. Indiana Jones cost $400 million to make. When you have a movie that costs $400 million to make, you are hamstringing yourself, because that means your movie needs to make at least $1 billion to break even after promotions and advertising. $1 billion is not a small amount of money for a film to make. It's hard. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to make. The most successful movie last summer was Barbie with $1.4 billion. The next most successful movie was Oppenheimer with $900 million. There was a $500 million spread between the two.
Everyone who's an eligible moviegoer needs to go to a movie if you're going to have 2 movies that are about $1 billion, right?
Yeah. It's insane. And so we're going to see that again. I think that this summer, I think a lot of studios have said, hey, you know what? We need to scale back. I'll give you an example. The Fall Guy, which I finally did see, by the way, which had great effects, almost all practical, that was budgeted at $125 million. It's already a lot, but considering, the recent spate of movies where a lot of movies were averaging like $250 million, it seems like a bargain.
It's warped how we think about it, but I agree. I mean, it is a bargain.
Insane to say that about a $125 million movie, because that means that on $125 million, let's say $70 million of advertising, that's another $140 million that you need to make. This movie needs to make closer to $450, $500 million before it breaks even. That's asking a lot for a movie like The Fall Guy. It's a must-watch in cinema for both of us, but you're asking a lot of that movie to make $500 million.
Yeah, I agree.
In the meantime, let's start with our number 10 film.
I will kick it off.
Yeah.
My predictee for the number 10 Hollywood blockbuster is Horizon, an American saga, which is the Kevin Costner post-Civil War epic. Yeah. Some people are calling it kind of like another Yellowstone. And apparently it's going to be 2 different chapters, but they're both going to be held, like both offered like relatively.
Yeah, both actually releasing in the summer window, which is unbelievable. One. Yeah. You've raised a great point, and I'm glad you started with that as your first movie. Let's knock it out. It is one movie that's been split into 2 parts, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. And the way I propose we do this is that because it's still 2 movies, because it's still theatrically going to be released as 2 different movies, what we'll do at the end of the summer is we'll take the average between the 2 movies and consider that as the final box office tick. Because otherwise, you're effectively going to be doubling your box office tick, and that's a little unfair. So I agree. If the first movie makes $100 million and the second movie makes $200 million, let's call it 150 and call it a bit.
I don't want to expand too much on it. Is that in your top 10 list that we'll talk about more when you reveal it?
It is on my wild cards. So yes, it's not on my top 10, but it's on my wild card.
I'll tell you my rationale, and maybe you'll echo this a little bit as well. I mean, definitely Kevin Costner's a big name. Sienna Miller is in it as well. I think that Yellowstone has really created a lot of buzz around this genre. But at the same time, I think there's probably a little bit of fatigue, and either you like Kevin Costner in that role or you don't. I don't think that you're going to get a lot of people that, didn't kind of watch or like Yellowstone to check into this. So I think it's going to have a pretty defined audience. I would say that expectations for this, or whatever the projections are, should be relatively accurate. I don't think it's going to dramatically overperform or underperform, but I think it's going to be solid for people that like that genre.
I think that, first of all, if you look at the cast, it's a pretty star-studded cast. Maybe not everyone is an A-list star, but certainly everyone you've heard of or seen in other shows. And it is
Will Patton, for example.
List.
Yeah. Sam Worthington. I mean,
Michael Rooker,
Michael Rooker,
Giovanni Ribisi. You mentioned Sienna.
Thomas Hayden Church, Luke
Yeah,
Wilson.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, it's a very stellar cast. It's a very well
Yeah.
recognized cast. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
It has everything going for it. I think that
Mm-hmm.
the appeal, like you rightly said, depends on what your preference is for, first of all, an epic, for
Mm-hmm.
a Western epic, for a post-Civil War, not a modern take on a Western epic. The good thing about Yellowstone is that it's a Western show, but it's
Mm-hmm.
really quite modern. I think it's going to feel a little bit like Killers of the Flower Moon. So let's put it this way. There's a reason it's on my wild cards list, because if it takes off, I think it's going to take off very well. But I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be really targeted to Western audiences, or at least I think it's going to appeal a lot more to Western audiences.
Yep. I agree with that. Give me your number 10.
A Quiet Place, day one.
Oh.
I'd say in the last couple of summers, or at least in the last couple of years, there's always one surprise, like pseudo horror movie or scary suspenseful movie that always does remarkably well. And I think it's going to be A Quiet Place. It was either going to be A Quiet Place day one, or it was going to be Alien. And I think that it's going to be A Quiet Place only because it's got a better track record as of late.
Yeah. You take it away. Let's go Serpentine. So you do number 9.
All right. Number 9 for me, it's a movie that just got released last weekend in the US. It still hasn't been released everywhere internationally. It's If Imaginary Friends. IF.
Okay.
That is the new John Krasinski directed and written movie starring Ryan Reynolds, Steve Carell. There's a bunch of people in there, all, again, it's ostensibly a children's movie, but it's not just a children's movie. It's one of those hybrid movies where there's a message for kids, but there's also a message for adults.
Not on my list because for a few reasons. I saw the previews and I'm not thrilled by the previews, and I'm not sure where it's going to appeal. I mean, Ryan Reynolds appeals to a lot of people. We'll get to Deadpool in a minute. The characters are not like characters that you recognize. They're just kind of like made up cartoon characters. So I don't think it's going to do that great. I also didn't put it on just because it's a May release, although I know that that's a little bit of a gray area. I think you're right to put it at 9, definitely not higher than that. It's not on my top 10 list. My number 9 was Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, and Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
Fly Me to the Moon.
What do you think of this movie? I saw the trailer just recently.
Yeah. I guess it's nothing special, but maybe that's why I think it's going to be a number 9, is that if you look at our list, they're very genre heavy. And if you're kind of looking for a date night movie, or you're looking for a movie that's just kind of okay for everybody, people recognize Channing Tatum. They recognize Scarlett Johansson. It's, got a little bit of a moon, NASA element to it. So I think this could be something that, gets a lot of traction. Definitely, I don't see this as a $1 billion movie, but it could be a number 9 movie for the summer season.
Yeah. I don't know if I read the trailer correctly, but there were elements of it that came off like a romantic comedy to me more than a sci-fi comedy / drama. That's why I didn't put it on my list. Generally speaking, romantic comedies don't necessarily do super well in the summer blockbusters. Having said that, A, star power galore. B, interesting topic, right? We're talking about the moon landing. We're talking about the Apollo program. We're talking about, they alluded to the trailer, this is not a spoiler, about them filming it or making a film version of it. So it kind of it leans into that conspiracy theory aspect of whether Stanley Kubrick directed the moon landing, as it were. It could be a very successful movie. I imagine that it will be a fun movie. I am looking forward to watching.
My number 8.
Yeah.
I've got Twisters, which is about the most summer blockbuster-ish popcorn munching movie I think you could come up with, right? I mean, it's a little bit of there was an original Twister with Helen Hunt. Was there a sequel after that?
No, this is it. This is the direct
the sequel. So this is the sequel to the 1996 Helen Hunt Twister. Kind of nice that they just added an S.
Yeah.
We've seen the Storm Chasers before. a little bit surprising it took so long to make a reboot. They've got Glenn Powell in there, who's a little bit hot.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that, again, not a billion-dollar movie, but in a summer where you're trying to find something that's palatable to everybody, this could be something that, meets that bill.
Yeah, I too have it slightly higher. My number 8 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh, okay.
So, the Planet of the Apes, let's say the modern trilogy, has done reasonably well. They've been not just critically acclaimed, but I think commercially quite successful as well. Don't know how this is going to play out. This, for me, of my top 10 list, this is probably the one that I'm the least confident about.
Oh.
But reviews were pretty good. Let's see how it plays out.
I don't have it on my list at all. I think I saw the trailers and I feel like there's a lot of fatigue for the Planet of the Apes. Hit me with your number 7.
My number 7 is Twisters, so I think that it's going to do better than that, but yeah.
My number 7 is the Garfield movie, voiced by Chris Pratt, Samuel L. Jackson. And I guess I feel like this just sounds kind of fun. The movie poster is very orange and bright. And I think there's a lot of people that have a really good feeling about, Garfield. And maybe this is kind of like the summer thing that just captures lightning in a bottle.
I agree with you. I think this summer in particular, I think that this summer is going to be the summer of like children's movies or movies aimed towards kids and a younger audience. That's my gut instinct at the moment. So, spoiler alert, I've got Garfield movie on my list, but it's a lot higher.
Whoa, I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Then let me do my number 6. My number 6 is Borderlands. It's based on the video game. A lot of action. Kate Blanchett's in it. Kevin Hart, Gina Gershon, who's my favorite. Jack Black is in it as well. Jamie Lee Curtis is in it as well. So, and Borderlands has, I think, a very, very strong following, from the video game. So let's see if that adaptation, takes off and translates to cinemas as well.
I agree with you on the principle that it looks like it could be a very fun movie. If you saw the trailer, it evoked a lot of the color and energy, the manic energy of like the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. There was a lot of quips. There's a lot of action. I also think, however, that it's a movie based on a video game franchise. And if you're a gamer, you know the franchise very well. But I think the overall gaming community for the franchise is a lot less than you'd expect. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's an R-rated movie. That's a harder sell. That's my feeling on it. But
is that not in your top 10 then?
It's not on my top 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's going to do very well. But I think it's going to do very well with the lens that it's a video game adaptation.
Okay.
My number 6 movie is Bad Boys 4 Ride or Die. Now, this is going to be at best a controversial play. Given that it stars Will Smith, the man most notoriously known for slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars 2 years ago, and then on the same night winning Best Actor. Here's my rationale.
I don't see that as the biggest challenge, but tell me your rationale for this.
Yeah. So the rationale is that the Bad Boys franchise has a lot of good history behind it. They're still quite fun movies. They're action movies. And in terms of action stars, Will Smith, despite the controversy, is still Will Smith. I get the feeling that this is probably going to be his attempt at a comeback in the more, let's say, mainstream audience. I think that in terms of black action stars and black comic action stars, there aren't that many out there at the moment that are in the limelight. So I think that he's got that demographic going.
All right. I'll tell you some numbers.
Okay.
And these numbers don't support my decision to keep it off the list, but I think they support yours. The first film, the original Bad Boys, which I think we can all agree by and large was a cheesy but fantastic Michael Bay film.
Yep.
$65 million in 1995. Then in 2003, then it was released in July, a true summer blockbuster. $138 million for Bad Boys 2. Then it took another 17 years for Bad Boys for Life to come out in January, mind you, and it grossed $206 million. Based on that, I think that you probably made the right decision to put it in, although I think it's way too high. I kept it out, not so much for the Will Smith reputational issue, but I feel like there is just I don't want to say fatigue because there's only been 3. I don't feel that there's a lot of passion. And the Bad Boys for Life, which I was so excited about, sincerely, I thought was a miserable movie. Yeah. And even in that movie, they were making fun of each other about being old and tired and achy and stuff like that. I don't know how 4 years later
that gets any better.
I'm just not sure that there is the same enthusiasm, for this franchise. They've added Vanessa Hudgens, which gives it a little bit of a younger feel, but I would expect what you kind of should do for a franchise like this is that you should add now the young protege, introducing him. And he's the guy who kind of takes the mantle from Mike Lowry and Marcus Burnett. Yeah. But right now, I don't see this overperforming, but to have it in the top 10, I think is not bad. I'm not aligned with your number 6, but we'll find out where it goes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, and I have a sneaking suspicion what you're saying is what they tried to do in the last movie, because remember they introduced the new squad of the 5 or 6 really young cops in that elite SWAT force kind of team.
And his son.
Okay, so his son, I don't know if he's in this movie. I haven't bothered, My level of interest outside of the top 10 list is not very high, which in and of itself probably tells you everything you should know about this film. But I think that if they really want to do that kind of because at the end of the movie, I think he goes to jail, right? At the end of the 3rd movie.
Maybe.
I don't remember, but I think he was a bad guy in the last movie.
Well, he was a bad guy, but then he kind of turned a good guy when he found out that Will's his father and
that his mom was the one who was actually not the good guy. Yeah. Exactly. So
the witch. Yeah. Right? The whole thing was just kind of.
Yeah, it was a little, but let's see. My reasons or my logic for putting this as high as I did is less about whether I think the movie's going to be good and more about the circumstances around the movie.
Now we're getting into the top 5. It's getting real, 5. My friend. Yep.
This gets a bit spicy for me. So my number 5 movie is Furiosa.
Basically, we don't really have anything dramatically different so far in our 5 to 10. So that means we're likely to have about the similar top 5, more or less.
This is exactly what happened last year.
Yeah.
Number 6 through 10 are where both of us are scratching our heads at each other's lists.
Yeah.
And 1 through 5 are kind of like where we're like, okay, we're in agreement that this is probably correct. It's just a matter of whether the positioning is correct.
You've got Furiosa at number 5.
Yeah. The reason I put it as number 5, and I don't want to take away from Furiosa, I think it's also important for our listeners to understand the placement of these movies is not indicative of whether we think the movie is going to be good or bad. It's just that this is how successful we think it's going to be in terms of commercial numbers. And that's to say, I think Furiosa is going to make a ton of movie because the last Mad Max movie did. In terms of the more modern franchise, it's one of the most visually appealing. It's one of the most visually unique movies. A lot of it was practical effects, not much CGI. The reason I've put it so low on my list, again, is not because I think it's going to do badly. I just think that the other movies are going to do better.
Okay. I put at number 5, A Quiet Place Day 1. I did it for a few reasons. First of all, did you know that the original Quiet Place made $340 million?
Yeah.
To me, that's a shocking amount. I guess I feel like everyone had a good feeling about the first one. Even people that didn't see it, I feel like they somehow have heard about it or have like a good sense of it. it's a prequel, which I think makes more sense than having it be a sequel. And I guess I also kind of figure like, this is one of these summer things where everything is just kind of like tuned in right. It's going to be released, at the very end of June. So really capture kind of like that 4th of July weekend traffic. Anyway, I kind of see this as maybe my surprising pick for the top 5. So I put it at number 5, A Quiet Place Day One.
Yeah.
You've got this as number 10. Yeah.
I've got this as number 10. Again, every year there's some upset movie. Yep. Last year I thought it was Barbie. I think this year it probably is going to be A Quiet Place, just because it's got a lot of goodwill coming into it. Not just from the studios, but I think also from the audience.
Yeah.
All right. So number 4.
My number 4 is Inside Out 2. You think that, this is going to be the summer of children's movies. The original Inside Out did fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it made $858 million.
Yeah.
I mean, $858 million. Inside Out 2 can only match or exceed that. I don't know. I never saw the original. That's a huge amount of money. Hard to argue that it's going to do worse since it's already got a lot of brand recognition. I've got that at number 4.
Yeah. Funnily enough, so do I.
Oh, okay. No explanation either then, huh?
I think it's going to do very well. I think for all the same reasons. It is a part of Bob Iger's strategy at Disney, especially in the last, I think, 2 summers, has really been hit with a lot of not just controversies, but with a lot of bombs in the box office. And they have outspent anyone and everyone. I think this is as safe a bet for them to go back to the formula, which is to say, hey, look, Inside Out 1 was a huge success.
Yep.
Let's do the same thing for this.
What do you have for now we're getting serious.
Now we're getting serious. This is the top 3.
All right. What do you have for number 3?
So in what I can only describe as a shocker, I've put Deadpool and Wolverine as my 3rd movie.
Okay. Walk me through it.
So I am quietly confident that this is going to be either placing number 1, 2, or 3. The reason I put it in 3rd place is it's an R-rated movie. The other reason I've put it in 3rd place is that it is an MCU movie. Now, this is a pro and a con, because the MCU has been shockingly hurt in the last, let's say, 3 years with their TV series and with their movies. Very few of them have been successful. There's been a lot of controversy at Disney, even more so with the MCU. So this movie has a heavy burden on it. That's I'm not saying that the reason why it's going to fail or not fail. I just think that there's a lot more pressure for this movie to be phenomenal. And if this movie is anything short of phenomenal, a lot of people are going to be like, well, that's the death of the MCU. I'm not one of those people. I'm more optimistic in general. I just think that the reason I've put it as number 3 instead of number 1, it's a hard sell to have an R-rated movie, especially one like Deadpool, which means that in America, if you want anyone under the age of 18 to go watch this movie, they have to go watch it with an adult or with their parents. How many people are going to want to watch a Deadpool movie with their parents? It's a harder sell, is what I'm saying. I think it's going to do incredibly well, but that's my logic.
Okay. I'll tell you my number 3, and I think I made a mistake, but it is what it is. I put Despicable Me 4 as number 3.
Okay.
And I probably should not have, because, I just quoted the numbers for Inside Out and justified why I put Inside Out 2 at number 4. For me, the Despicable Me franchise, which is, part and parcel of the Minions franchise, has a great brand. But when I look at those numbers, they're actually surprisingly a little bit low. The original Despicable Me did $250 million. Despicable Me 2, a very respectable $368. Despicable Me 3 then went down to $264. Oh, that's not a good trend. And that last Despicable Me was in 2017. They were released in 2010, 2013, 2017.
I'm going to throw a spanner in the works for you. You're looking at the domestic box office for the US. Let
Maybe
me
that's
revamp
right.
those numbers for the worldwide box office.
All right.
Despicable Me 1 in 2010 made $545 million.
That seems more right. Yeah.
Despicable Me 2 made $975 million. Despicable Me 3 made $1 billion.
So I'm right on having 4 where I had it then. Yeah.
Yeah, potentially. Minions made
Yeah.
1.1 billion. Minions 2 made 940 million.
Yeah.
So Despicable Me 4, I'm not saying is a lock for
Got
a
it.
$1 billion movie. I
Got
think
it.
you're okay. I think you're in absolutely the right place for it.
That's my 3. My 2, Furiosa. The reason I've got it at number 2 is I think that there's a dearth of really, really big, gotta see blockbuster movies on the big screen on IMAX this summer. I mean, everything that I've listed, Despicable Me 4, Inside Out, Quiet Place, Borderlands, Garfield movie, Twisters, Fly Me to the Moon, Horizon. Furiosa is the cinematic IMAX, gotta see it type movie. I think it's got a lot of press. Visually, we know exactly what George Miller is capable of. I expect that this is going to be a huge, huge hit. And I think when it comes time for Academy Awards, certainly Best Picture, cinematography, lighting, costumes, all those are going to be nominations for it. So I think this is going to be something that almost everybody who goes to a cinema is going to be presented with as an option in a multitude of different times, right? And we know that that's how a lot of people make their movie decisions as well. They're in a mall, they show up to the cinema, hey, what's showing? And when you see Furiosa at 5, 7, 9:15, 9:30, 9:45, 10:30, 11 o'clock, I think just by virtue of how many screens it's going to be in compared to, the alternatives are going to be Despicable Me 4, Inside Out 2, maybe Twisters. I think it's just going to get a lot of traffic by virtue of being present. So I've got Furiosa at number 2.
So I tend to agree with you on this, especially. The only reason I put it as low as I did, again, not a qualitative issue, I think just in terms of performance, it came out, in my opinion, a little early. I think the fact that it came out last week, I think if it had come out later in June or even July 4th weekend or around that time, I have a sneaking suspicion it would have done better. Again, this is totally unfounded. I'm speculating. We still have, we're still at the end of May. There's still time. Yeah. We don't know how it's going to be. It's also, I think, by the virtue of the summer schedule, it's got a pretty open runway for at least another 2 weeks, another 3 weeks in the US.
Yeah.
The next major hurdle for it in the cinema is going to be Inside Out 2, which is, I believe, the 14th of June.
All right. What do you have as your number 2? I'm really fascinated to hear this.
So for me, my number 2 is the Garfield movie.
Ooh.
I think that, again, like I said, I think this is going to be the summer of kids movies. I think that there's a lot of quote unquote high quality kids movies coming out. I think Chris Pratt is riding a high. He's, voiced a couple of high profile animated shows now. I think that this could be the fun kids movie that parents are happy to take their kids to.
Oh, you know what this means. Now you've got to reveal your number 1.
My number 1 is Despicable Me 4.
All right.
I think it's been an upward trend. I think that it's about right in terms of release date. The last movie was 2 years ago, and that was a Minions movie. The last Despicable Me movie was 7 years ago. So I think that in terms of hitting its stride, I'm pretty sure this is going to do well.
For my number 1, I've got Deadpool and Wolverine for a few reasons. I take your point about the challenges, which is it's rated R, and that's going to obviously limit it. I think, first of all, the first 2 Deadpools have been incredibly well received. Deadpool 2 made, $785 million. And I don't think that there's any fatigue for this franchise. I think adding Wolverine is, I think, for brand recognition, great. And I think for how they're going to incorporate him into the story is going to capture a lot of people's imagination, and they're going to want to see that, which is, I think, an extra hook rather than just seeing, a third standalone Deadpool movie. I think Ryan Reynolds is very hot. I'm expecting this to be the number one movie in the summer right now.
In terms of numbers, both Deadpool 1 and 2 made almost exactly the same amount of money, $782 million and $786 million, respectively. I'm not saying that this is going to make the same amount of money. I think this is going to make more money. I just think that that's also reflective of the rated R movie. For me, I think this movie should be making a lot more. I think this is a $1 billion franchise. And I think the addition of Wolverine, counter to my own placement in the rankings and more in support of your placement, I think the addition of Wolverine and the potential introduction of the X-Men into the franchise is what's going to put them over the top. And it's also going to inject some much needed lifeblood into the MCU.
Yep, I agree. So our top fives, or I should even say like our top sixes, we've got a lot of similarity. I think it's going to be a matter of positioning in the top five between you and I.
Yeah.
And I think the kind of like 7 through 10, we've got a few differences there. So it's really going to be kind of what made the cut and what did not, So I've got Horizon, I've got Fly Me to the Moon, you've got you've got Planet of the Apes, you've got Bad Boys Ride or Die.
You've got Borderlands. Yeah, I think between us on this top 10 list, there's like maybe 2 or 3 movies each that we're not necessarily fully aligned on.
Yeah.
The difference is that, you've got Bad Boys in your wild card. So let's quickly go through your wild cards. What's your first wild card?
So I put my wild cards in order.
Yeah.
My first one is The Bike Riders.
Yeah, Jodie Comer and Oscar Buster, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, the reviews I think have been quite positive. I think the trailer looks fantastic. But again, this is not going to be, I think, a top 10 movie, but I think it's going to be a solid movie just because of star power and some good reviews that, gets a reasonably good audience. My second wild card is Bad Boys Ride or Die. Similar reasons, why you put it at, I guess, number 6 or number 7.
Yeah.
It's a well-known franchise. If you're looking for if we look at our top 10 lists, I mean, there's not a lot of African-American stars in this list at all, right? So, I mean, I think that fills a very important genre as well. And it appeals to everybody. Everybody kind of knows the story. Me and you know the story. We love the story. So I would expect that's my second wild card.
Okay. So my first wild card is the Horizon movies.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second wild card is Alien Romulus, because again, every summer there's a suspense / horror / thriller / scary movie that succeeds.
Yep.
It could be A Quiet Place. It could be Alien. I went with Quiet Place over Alien. I just thought that, it's a well-known franchise, but I think it's also relatively niche in the sense that it's been dwindling every release. So I think that I will enjoy the movie greatly. I just don't see a huge public demand.
Yeah. So that's our top 10 list. I mean, any observations when you look at my list and your list side by side?
Not particularly surprising. Again, the top 5, generally speaking, I think is absolutely right in the sense that they're on the list. I don't know where on the list they will end up, but I think generally speaking, you and I both agree that these are probably going to be the most successful films this summer.
Yeah.
The bottom 5 is where things get a little bit more spicy in the sense that I maybe made a few leaps of logic. You've also made a few leaps in logic. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's what's going to be interesting in September is because you get to look back, with like hindsight and say like, oh, that was a really good assumption. You assume that was going to happen. That was a really good assumption. Or you say like, that was an assumption and it didn't happen for a lot of reasons, you could make like last year, you're like, oh, people are really have such great vibes for Indiana Jones. We haven't seen him for a while. It's so nostalgic. Everyone will love, to see him again. He's adding the lady from Fleabag. That's going to be a really great, pairing. Those are all like assumptions we could have, made to get that into like the top 5. None of those held true, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were, to put things in perspective, you and I were both 6 for 10 last year. I mean, I'm not saying that you and I are experts, but I would say you and I are, let's say, more informed than the average cinema goer.
Yeah.
And that's just, frankly speaking, because you and I spend more time at the cinema. We spend more time on TV. We spend more time on IMDb.
Yeah.
So for both of us to have a 60% track record, I don't think that indicates anything about Pete and Ethan. I think that indicates more about the status of Hollywood last year, that there were so many shockers. And again, you and I were 1 for 1 or 1 for 2 or 2 for 2 on our wild cards.
Yeah.
So if you take those into account, then, we were 7 for 12 or 8 for 12. That gets slightly better, but not much, to be honest.
I mean, I'll say some things, though, in our defense. This is based on the movie itself, and it's not based on the perceived quality of the movie. For example, last year I remember that I had the race car movie on my top 10 list, and I stand by that being a very good choice. I think I had it like number 9 and number 10. That was a terrible movie.
Gran Turismo. Yeah, that was your wild card.
That was a terrible, terrible movie. Like, I went and Orlando Bloom gave a performance that amounted to a shrug. Like, I've been paid in advance. Do I feel like putting any effort into my character at all? Not really. That's a true story. That was a fantastic story that was killed by either bad casting, bad directing, bad producing, something. I don't think it was a bad choice to put that on my list. I think that we didn't know in advance it was going to be such a shite production. Even Indiana Jones, right? We said, hey, we have a little bit of concern about like the de-aging technology that's going to be used. Is that going to wreck the film? And to be honest, maybe it didn't wreck the film, but it definitely didn't do anything good for the film.
Yeah. That's our top 10 plus our wild card. So, almost like a top 12, as it were. We will continually monitor this. I will keep filling in our list and making sure that I'm on track as to where things are as they stand. And probably in the next month or two, we'll give you kind of like a mid-season update. We're 1 month in, probably at the end of June. We'll do a quick recap to see where we're standing, because by the end of June, we will have had the first chapter of Horizon released, Bad Boys released, Inside Out 2 released. There's going to be a few movies on our list that's going to have been released. I think it's also hilarious that neither of us bothered putting Kraven the Hunter, which is a Spider-Man movie that just sneaks into the summer blockbuster list. I don't think that's going to do anything, because Sony has really screwed the pooch with that franchise.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, Pete, tell our listeners and fans where they can write to us to agree, disagree. I guess I'll say the only 2 options, agree or disagree. There's not a third.
Here's the third one. Share us your top 10 lists. Make sure you give us your wild cards. Let us know where you think these movies are going to fall in. Again, we look for success. We look for accuracy. We'll get into the point scoring at the end of the summer. Tweet at us at FNS Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. Or the best thing you can do is you can leave a comment below this video, including that list, of course. Hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, all the usual YouTube jazz that really helps us out.
That's it. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this very special episode of Films and Stuff. From Ethan and from Pete, wish you all a great weekend ahead.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.